Welcome back to Sunrise Daily. Dr. Sam Amadi, please go ahead with your submissions.
Okay, so the point I'm trying to make is essentially, I think INEC, because INEC has been politically exposed over the years, INEC is a political institution, and so it's open to, it's agency that government politicians would like to game, to capture. Therefore, INEC has a greater risk of being captured by a ruling party or by opposition. And but the point remains that INEC, the independence is determined by what we call the institutional character of the agency. If INEC has found itself, conceived itself as an independent agency, if INEC has not got the character of looking towards VILA for instructions or for support, and of course the Constitution also helps INEC by providing, we talk about giving INEC physical independence. So there are 3 levels: physical independence, you control your money. Second is managerial, you manage your staff, nobody directs you who to use. And thirdly, it's autonomy of decision making. You make decisions through a commission that votes on policy. And so that setting allows INEC to pretend as if it's not even listening to the politicians. INEC doesn't need to go out on a warpath, issue statements and say, look, we disagree with anybody. INEC simply sits there, make a decision through its own board arrangement, come out with a decision and implement. And by the way, the idea about displaying election results and transmission real time is something that is so rudimentary in any conception of managerial efficiency. You just want to get the job done.
All right, Dr. Amadi.
So does it require legislative intervention?
Dr. Amadi,
does it require any constitutional amendment? It simply
does.
Let's bring Dr. Ikechukwu here. Let's bring Dr. Ikechukwu. Dr. Ikechukwu, the concept of INEC being a regulator, an independent regulator in this situation where Nigeria is right now, there are those who will say might get overwhelmed being a regulator. I mean, before now, INEC was dealing with less than 50 political parties, but now INEC has to deal with about 90 political parties, and all of them with pressures here and there and all of that, with what some will say no legal, don't get me wrong, no legal backing for these electronic moves or these ideas that they want to bring in. Yes, the Constitution has given them the room and the right to come up with guidelines they can work with. But then, the strength of those guidelines, can they stand in the face of law with the number of people that will be pressurizing them for one thing or the other?
The first point to make is that INEC is not independent. And by that I mean it's an institution set up by law. Whatever rules it sets up, there's a final clearinghouse for those rules. Sam has mentioned fiscal independence. They control their money, their processes, institutional integrity. But that money has to be approved by a National Assembly. Whatever rules it makes and wants to implement, it said subject to the President's approval. So I want to remove the notion that INEC is independent in an ontological sense. It is an institution of state created by the Constitution and statutes and is bound by the law to that extent. The concern about the bill is that if you have an enactment of the National Assembly making it mandatory for INEC to do what it should ordinarily do for efficiency, it means that it is binding. So it's an effort actually to further improve transparency by making certain administrative actions of INEC mandatory and not discretionary. So if it's discretionary and I keep away the result instead of making it known there, it allows opportunity for arbitrary, unlawful, or subversive exercise of discretion. I've served as a presiding officer during an election. I was involved in a training for resident electoral commissioners in Calabar, I think 2 or 3 months ago. Let us take inventory of the progression of INEC. The INEC of today is not the INEC of 1999, 2003, or 2007. INEC has improved these processes very significantly, dramatically, and commendably. Jega's tenure was actually, if you like, the turning point in terms of the stature, caliber, trajectory of persons and processes used during elections. Mahmoud is building on that. Let us note some of the challenges also, that the parties are also not doing their homework. But sorry, before I take that further, the observation about the increase in number of political parties, they're using they're using electronic platforms. The larger the class, if your processes are streamlined, the building need not collapse. So that's not an issue in itself as much as the issue of law. the process of the election, what actions are mandatory for INEC. And I make a distinction between mandatory and discretionary actions. Administrative efficiency obliges us to transmit elections immediately. It gets to the collation center. You display, the people are satisfied. They go home, and so everybody is happy. But if it lies with you, whether you could do this or not, if it is at your discretion, it means that you can actually alter the outcome before transmitting. And I give the example. As presiding officer, it was during the option A4 formula of Professor Musa. I was presiding officer in Lagos Island. We had finished the elections. We came out, counted everybody. They saw the counting. But when we then entered the polling booth to record, it turned out that because it was two parties, SDP and NRC, I think, Sam? Yeah, NRC. It turned out that one party had actually already paid off the agent of the other party, and they had conspired for us to sign a result different from what was outside. I refused as a presiding officer. The booth was surrounded. We were about to be beaten up, but fortunately there was intervention. The patrolling police people came by, and we carried the ballot box and signed the correct and then ran into the thing. The point I'm making being that the issue is exercise of discretion. It allows arbitrary, unlawful, subversive, anti-democratic exercise of discretion. But if it's a law making it mandatory that you transmit these results, that you display them, you display the list of voters, it means that you do not have a choice. And it is, again, within the context of this that you see why people feel that perhaps the president, by not signing, is allowing for loopholes that will create less than transparent outcomes. That's the basis for that concern.
Let me come in here again and get the views of Dr. Sam. Because going by what he said, do you think we can have credible elections if those two recommendations are taken off? That is the display of the voters, the voter register at the, the results of the voters at the polling units, and also the other one, which is to do with the
transmission.
The transmission of the results.
Well, I think clearly, first, I want to make it clear that I'm not saying that the amendment is not good. It's the right direction. Like he said, the amendment does three things. One, it creates accountability. If you look at the Electoral Act, there are certain functions that electoral officers should do. If they don't do it, or INEC officials, there's no penalty. For example, if you fail to display voter register, the new amendment pins you with accountability, threat of imprisonment, and fines. The secretary of INEC is supposed to be non-partisan and should disclose all political affiliations. If you fail to do that, the new amendment says you're subject to 5 years imprisonment, and so on and so forth. So that's a good way. Secondly, it creates some clarity where there lack ambiguity in the law. Thirdly, like I said now, it builds on a practical experience in the field by bringing innovations that reduce the discretion of electoral officers. But the point I'm making is this. This is what it is. We don't have the Electoral Act signed. It doesn't look like the National Assembly is capable or even have the numbers to override at this point. So my argument is Section 160 actually, I think my colleague probably missed at what I was saying. I said 160 says INEC rule-making powers don't require any approval. If in the past INEC have been sending their procedures, regulations, guidelines, and I don't think they have been to the presidency, that's wrong. INEC is authorized to make its own rules for the conduct of election without any other external oversight of those rules. That's what the Constitution says, not even the Act. And by the way, the executive power of the president under Section 5 is subject to the Constitution and any law made by the National Assembly. It's not endless. It's limited, conscribed and circumscribed by the time of the Constitution and the laws that the National Assembly makes. And the National Assembly's power to make law is also limited to what the Constitution says. For example, the National Assembly cannot amend the Electoral Act and require INEC to submit their rules for its vetting. That would be unconstitutional. Okay, let's step back and say, in the absence of this amendment, my point is this, that we are not hopeless, that INEC is not helpless. Like he said, INEC independence in third world countries a matter of fiction if it's only on paper. Independence is actually activated by an understanding, and sadly, because we run a system where we use common law from the British system, and we have an American Constitution, there is incoherence in our legal understanding. The Supreme Court included, they have made mistakes about trying to circumscribe the power of regulatory agencies. Elsewhere, we do what we call deference. We defer to their statutory powers. So INEC's interpretation of its law, INEC is an expert in interpreting its law. When I was a chief executive, a regulator, I used to smile when people say, let's go to the Attorney General to define NEC power, and I laugh at them. Because of my training in administrative and constitutional, I said, no, I am the chief interpreter of my law. The regulatory agency is the authoritative interpreter of its law. That's what the law says.
We know that also.
101.
We know that. I'm in agreement with you on that. But the question is, as you said, in the absence of the Electoral Amendment Bill, what then happens? Yes. Are we comfortable using the incident forms? Will the incident forms now, which will come into play, or hopefully, we're not really sure about that, but what then happens?
Okay, what happens, quickly before my colleague comes in, is first, INEC should activate its law rulemaking power and issue a guideline. And by the way, INEC's regulatory rules are as enforceable as law of parliament, which means, for example, if INEC says all presiding officers should immediately transmit results to the next level or to the INEC server, any person who does not do that commits an offense as if it was a law made by parliament. That's what we fail to understand. INEC can activate that rulemaking process. INEC can mandate by law, by subsidiary law, legislation, that all presiding officers should transmit to their server. And that presupposes that INEC has built the technology platform for that to happen. If INEC is ready and considers it important to safeguard the integrity of the electoral process, I'm building on